Hello everyone and welcome to Sinful Gaming. I hope you're all doing well, I hope you're all staying safe, and most of all, I hope you're all fighting that war against the Grey. Today's video, we're going to talk about some good armies. And we're going to talk about the 5 armies that are currently doing really well in Age of Sigmar. They've consistently shown over a number of games and a number of events that these armies are doing really well at the moment. And so we're going to talk about why they're doing so well and the things that are making them do so well, and things you should maybe plan for when you're versing these armies to look out for and wonder about, because these are the things they're going to be able to do to you on the tabletop. If you're going to an event for the first time, the chance of running into one of these armies is pretty likely, as the vast majority of these do have a decent meta percentage. That is to say, they're rather common, though your own local meta may change from what these ones are, and indeed your own local meta may change from what these ones are entirely. And you may never see any of these armies, but we're going to talk about the 5 that are doing really well, and we're going to talk about why they are doing really well today. So let's get cracking on. First of all, we'll name the armies, and then we'll look at each one individually out of these top 5. And so these are the current best 5 armies in the game. These are armies that have proven over a vast quantity of games and events that they definitely have the numbers to sort of back up, I guess, their placing in these top 5, and these are in order. They are Sons of Behemat, Disciples of Tzeentch, Lumineth Realm-lords, Seraphon, and the Daughters of Khaine. Now, we should also mention an honourable mention goes to Legion of the First Prince. However, the data that is available out there that shows that these armies are doing well is not in Legion of the First Prince favour, as they have played significantly less games across events than other armies. Now, if you'd like a full and much more expansive meta-analysis than rather the reasoning I'm going to go here into a very deep dive, I go suggest you check out The Honest Wargamer either on Twitch or on his website, as he does amazing work in the Age of Sigmar stats. He puts together so much work with a team he has for this, and you should definitely go check him out for a full comprehensive review on so much of this on the Honest Wargamer website, where all of this is put out for spreadsheets. It's amazing. Today we're just going to go a little brief overview looking at each faction and why they're doing so well, and he'll break it down into so much more number crunchy stuff than I will here today. But let's get cracking on with this brief little overview. And so, number 1, the Sons of Behemat. Why are they doing so well? Well, the first thing is wound density, backed up by save stacking, additional wound abilities, and access to ward saves. So, Sons of Behemat have a lot of wounds. The average Mega Gargant has 35 wounds. The fact that this can be your battle line option and your hero option as well means even a 4 Mega Gargant army is going to have 140 wounds before we add anything else onto the table. Now, 140 wounds, that sort of sounds like it's okay, but the fact that they have a 4-up base, meaning they can go to a 3-up, and they have access to potential artifacts to get magic inside their army. They have Finest Hour inside their army because they're all heroes. They also have obviously the use of command abilities and stuff like that to get all these additional bonuses to save, can really make them quite tough. With all the bonuses, they can put, Finest Hour, Mystic Shield, and all our defense all on the one model. So this means you can have an ignoring 2 points of range, 3-up save. That's pretty tough. Now, on top of this, they all have access to, regardless of which tribe you're playing, a 5 extra wound command trait, which in turn just makes one of them just even more ridiculously tough. 5 extra wounds is really good on such a hard model to kill already. Now, it's worth remembering a 5-up ward or a 5-up armor save increases your wounds by about 50%. It's not actually true, because you need to go through hit wounds and then take saves. It's not directly 30% like you would first think when you first think of the math. You need to think about it a little bit more of like how you get to those wounds. So it's actually about 50% extra for a 5-up save. So if you're managing to go to a -2 save, someone's having to have like render billion to get you back to that 5-up save where you're not. Now then, add in the fact that they have additional access to ward saves, now only a 6-up rather than what it used to be. This is definitely a recent nerf to the Gargants, but it doesn't seem to have affected because it's still just a ton of wounds. Mortal wounds definitely do more against Gargants now than they used to, thanks to having a lesser ward save, but also another hurt to Gargants currently is the fact of the change to heroic recovery. They can no longer use it in combat. So trying to tie them up is definitely a strategy to stop them healing. Now, Gargants are strong on objective play, and this is probably the single biggest thing about Gargants that makes them so good. A single Gargant can count as a very, very large amount of models, and they never degrade. Whether they are on 1 wound or on full health, they count as this full amount of models, which in particular tribes can be 30 models per Mega Gargant, which is just amazing for the Gargants, that is. And this combines with the fact that Gargants do have a lot of high rend attacks. Now, generally, the way you would try and think to counter Gargants is by having hordes, because it's going to give you lots of bodies to try and counter them and get them on objectives, and you're going to need small bases, so you're looking at like 25mm bases on an objective of a Gargant because they're so large, they're going to take up so much space. However, lots of those 25mm base horde units don't have a good armor save, and so because of that, they generally don't get saves against Gargant attacks, which means Gargants can work through those hordes relatively quickly. This is a problem because it means that Gargants are also good at objective play and good at stopping the units that have the potential to outnumber and outcap them on an objective. This means you need to go in hard and fast to try and counter Gargants. Generally, if you're playing a 4 Mega Gargant army, you need to try and be able to take out 1 Gargant turn 1 and at least another 1 or 2 by turn 2. So you need to have those damage dealing pieces in your army to be able to deal with Gargants. You need those massive hammers. Number 2, we have the Disciples of Tzeentch. So let's start off with Kairos, and the Fate dice for this army allow you to both choose and sort of pick when to use certain numbers of dice. Kairos himself can change dice rolls throughout the game, both when casting and make your opponent change some of their dice as well throughout the game with once per game ability. And also Fate dice allow you to pre-pick results. You roll 9 dice at the start of the game, and there's ways you can generate more throughout the game, and you roll them, and these numbers that you roll from that become dice numbers that you can use to guarantee things to happen or to guarantee numbers throughout the course of the game. Obviously, rolling this can be a little bit random. You could roll lots of 3s and 4s, which aren't really the best dice for anything, though they still have their uses. 5s, 6s, and 1s and 2s can be great for battle shock and for attack rolls and for ability rolls and all that sort of stuff, the things you need to use these on. So these can be massive things with the dice. Knowing that your opponent can just automatically succeed, it really makes it hard to sort of plan going, oh, well, maybe they'll fail this, when they can go, well, I'm definitely going to succeed that charge because I have 2 6s. That's going to be a 12-inch charge. Now, to add on top of this, Disciples of Tzeentch also have lots of large mortal wound output from a bunch of powerful wizards in the army. They have quite a few casting bonuses or casting abilities that make them really hard to cast. They don't have a lot of auto cast stuff, but they do have a lot of ways to get very high numbers on those casting rolls. Once again, looking at things like Kairos, where he can change the lowest dice to the number of the highest dice when casting. If it rolls a 6, it becomes a 12 to cast, which is pretty solid. But it is this mortal wound output where nearly everything has some sort of ranged mortal wound output, and you add this on top of the fact that you've also got a lot of shooting on lesser quality, so all your horrors put out shots, your Khaine acolytes put out shooting attacks as well, and just a bunch of other things from the army can put out lots of ranged damage, whether that be sort of splash or large quantities of not very good damage or more mortal wound output from your wizards. This army can put out a ton of damage at range. And to back this up, you're able to do so for quite a while of time because you have bodies upon bodies, as horrors of any form are pretty much the best wound per point ratio unit in the entire game. Horrors can split into blues and then can split into brims. This just means there's just a ton of wounds to get through. Add on to the fact that certain sub-factions can stop you from retreating from these blobs of horrors, can really sort of add and compound all these things together to really make this force quite hard to deal with. If you can throw these horrors forward and stuff them in your opponent's deployment zone and pin them in place, they're not having to wade their way through a couple of turns without being able to retreat these horrors. And if they don't have the DPS check units in the right places at the right time, you're going to be able to hold them up and just control the board for long enough that you can score enough points that you can't deal with them. And next, the Seraphon. So, like the previous one, we have lots of ranged mortal wounds and a ton of high rend and high damage mortal wound range damage as well. So, looking at units like Salamanders who do D3 damage and potential for D3 mortal wounds at range, this is really strong as well because it is over a 9-inch range for those weapons, and they do the damage in combat as well on top of that. but also looking at other units that can also provide good range damage. Things like Bastiladons are great at providing high rend, high damage attacks, and things like Skinks can provide quite a large amount of attacks, and as we'll get to in a sec, they can do a lot of mortal wounds. And so this is just a major part of the army, being able to do this loads of range damage, whether that's from actual shooting or magic or other abilities in the army. There is a ton of range damage available to the army. Another thing with Seraphon that I guess makes them more versatile than maybe some of the other armies in this is they have two, I guess, sub-factions under the faction that then become sub-factions themselves, but these two, I guess, types of Seraphon armies, be that Coalesced or the Starborn, have really good rules for either one. The fact that you get for being Coalesced, the, I guess, Savage Seraphon, you get -1 damage across your whole army is great defensively. And then you've got the offensive benefits of playing in the Starborn with the ability to both summon units to the table and also teleport around the table as well. So there's just a lot of stuff you can do here with options for the army to make them strong in one way or the other. Both of these, both the Coalesced and both the Starborn, are finding ways in the current competitive meta to be prominent. Now they're both still using really similar units and really similar ways, so there are lots of range, mortal wound, and high damage, high rend. Output at range is apparent for both types of this army. However, they just go about it slightly differently. Now you've also got really cheap units with cheap buff heroes as well. This in turn, when that cheap buff hero has a really good buff that can go on a really cheap unit that can be taken in large numbers with ranged attacks, is really, really powerful. I'm of course talking about Skinks and the Skink Star Priest, but this can apply to a bunch of units because the Star Priest really doesn't matter whether it's going on Cold One Knights or anything. The ability to give out mortal wounds on 6s is just really, really good as an ability to have for one of the models in your army who is a relatively cheap, if not squishy, character. On top of this, you've got strong wizards in the Slan Mage Priest and Lord Croak, and also some really cool interactions you can have with the army there, and good magical defense with the ability to unbind table-wide as well. There's just a ton of stuff going for Seraphon in multiple different directions as to why I think they're probably almost the best army in the game, because no matter how the game changes, I feel like Seraphon are going to be able to flip and sort of carry on doing something. Like, Starborn used to be a lot more common, and now we're seeing a lot more Thunder Lizards Coalesced come into the game as well. So I think this is the army that's got the options here out of these top tier armies to really sort of move wherever the meta may go. They'll be up the top for a very, very long time. Moving on, number 4, Lumineth Realm-lords. So, Lumineth Realm-lords have a very strong, dominant caster in Teclis. Now, Teclis has a really cool ability where he can choose to cast a certain amount of spells each turn, and he can either cast them at certain values, or he can, if he chooses 2 spells, just auto-cast them, they cannot be unbound. This allows him to really dictate heavily what spells are going off and getting up all important spells for the army that are required for the army to work. Now, add on to this that you're able to put quite a few competitive lists into a 1-drop battalion. This allows things like Teclis to not only be able to dictate his spells in the phase and dictate that hero phase magic off, he's able to dictate the drops and who gets first turn, enabling him to put his own benefits up early to stop you being able to alpha strike him and jump him without these particular benefits up in the army. So this is really strong. Not only can he do the thing, he can get to a point where you can't stop him doing the thing. Lumineth as well just have a really good mortal wound output, whether that's from range or combat, it's strong regardless. Ranged mortal wounds do not require line of sight as well, so at 30 inches they're not needing to see anything, they can just mortal wound things off the table. It's a really, really powerful ability to have on a shooting unit that can be battle lines, so it can be taken in lots of 3, so 30 models with this is just really good. And not only that, but you can have these mortal wounds triggering on 5s with rerolls from a spell called Lambent Light, meaning you can reroll all dice, so you're fishing for 5s and 6s to get those mortal wounds. It's a really strong combination, and if that wasn't enough, the combat units that do mortal wounds can do even more mortal wounds with the abilities, which is just super, super powerful. Now, on top of this, you have alternate Lumineth builds other than the Sentinel and the Wardens and stuff like that, and you have the Wind Spirit style army, which is a really different style of play. It's all about not allowing your opponent to engage, just having a bunch of models that can not be engaged with in close combat, as they have the ability to move in both of the turns of the game, which just enables them to have a ton of movement across the table, just really frustrating your opponent. And you've got a bunch of other units that have the ability to pile in however they want, have 6-inch pile-ins, a whole bunch of other abilities that really just allow them to dictate combats in whichever way the army sees fit to benefit them on the tabletop. And lastly, Daughters of Khaine. First of all, once again, strong access to ranged and close combat mortal wound output put this army at a really strong position. It also has the ability to activate units in the hero phase to either fight or shoot. This can massively increase a output of a lot of units in the army, with a lot of the units that are able to do these large amounts of mortal wound output having the ability to become battle line with particular generals through the army. This means that you can activate these units as well to do a lot of damage. Being able to shoot twice with mortal wound ranged output is just really strong. It also enables you to do it if someone tries to tie you up, to shoot the target you're in within the hero phase and then shoot something else once you've dealt with that target in the shooting phase. So being able to get the best of both worlds or double tap into a single unit is a really strong ability for the army. Morathi is a massive reason why this army is so competitive though, as her ability to only take 3 wounds a turn from the Ironheart of Khaine is massive. This gives you an anvil that your army can 100% rely on. You've got the 2 versions of Morathi, so you can actually pin 2 of your opponent's units in with this piece, having them have to fight Morathi for 2 whole turns, meanwhile your other units get in place, or indeed if you've still got one of the versions of Morathi on the table as well, for even longer if you're able to do it. Morathi is no slouch, she's actually going to kill stuff as well, so having her into combat, throwing her in, she's not necessarily just going to sit there and die, she's going to kill stuff when she does it as well. You've got a really strong caster in the Little Morathi, the actual goddess herself, Morathi Khaine, and the Shadow Queen is an absolute combat monster. So both of these forms just give Daughters of Khaine massive edge into otherwise what would be a decent and very good army. They give it that anvil that it can rely on to get those other pieces. You've also got access to abilities like Run and Charge in the army, which can be massive on a bunch of the snake units. And you've also got an increasing access to a bunch of different rerolls across the army. That means your army gets better and better as the game goes on. You're starting off in turn 1 getting rerolls to run, then rerolls to charge, rerolls to hit, rerolls to wound. And finally, Battle Shock Immunity is super good. This just gives you a ton of different abilities, and there's ways with particular sub-factions in which you can increase your access to these, potentially starting off with Run and Charge rerolls straight off the bat, getting hits in turn 2 and wounds in round 3, just enabling you to do even more damage with this army. The lighter options of the army, the more friendly options, are still really good and can pack out a ton of damage with a really good spell lord and some really cool, interesting endless spells and endless prayers, some invocations for the army to have access to. Well, that's the end of the video. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed it, please leave a comment below and let us know what you enjoyed about the video, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel and turn those bell notifications on so you don't miss a beat when we upload new stuff to the channel. Lastly, if you'd like to help support the channel in another way, you can do so either by helping support the channel on Patreon or YouTube members. This allows us to continue to make new content for the channel, exploring other game systems outside of Warhammer Age of Sigmar, like we have started to with things like Elder Scrolls: A Call to Arms and Conquest: The Last Argument of Kings and Warhammer 40,000, and it helps us just continue to make more Age of Sigmar content as well. Thank you to, though, everyone who has helped support, and we'd like to give them all a shout out to our patrons. First of all, Christian Weir, James Soren, Greenskins Gaming, AJC, Kenny Lowe, Outer and Shop First, Andrew Bowen, Nathan Fee, The Rising Ape, Cure Dynamic, Agu, Anthony B, Anton Nilsson, JJ Austrian, Average Wargamer, Domir, Mark Harvey, James Cater, and Samuel. And to our YouTube members as well, Green Roots Gaming, Kenton Young, Chris Wallace, Ronya, Vinny Lockloric, The Journey 84, David Ellsworth, Revenar, Wolfric Nick, Broken Chef, Sean Scott, and Diplomat. And a special thank you, of course, to, first of all, Lady Witchfox Art, who does all the amazing artwork for the channel you see here, and to Xmorphic, who does all the awesome background work on our Discord server, keeping that nice and running properly for us all. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Once again, stay safe, stay well, and most of all, keep fighting that war against Grey. Ciao for now.